Hello and welcome to Carved in Stone, where I pick a topic and select my Mount Rushmore of that topic. In other words, my top four. Lists, of course, are subjective, and narrowing it down to four is narrowing it down quite a bit, so I'll explain why some may fall just short of my mountain. I'm your host, Shawn Chabam, and with WrestleMania being this weekend, I'll be giving you my Mount Rushmore of WrestleMania matches of the Golden Era. Now, I watch WrestleMania every year. I don't necessarily watch it live, but I do eventually watch it. I haven't been huge into it since about 1994, which was WrestleMania 10, and that's the last time I was watching WWE regularly. It's arguable whether 10 counts as the golden era or not. That's kind of right on the cusp of the end. But I'm only going to make WrestleManias 1 through 10 eligible today. I'm allowing 1 and 2, even though I wasn't extremely passionate until WrestleMania 3, because as I said, I watch every year, and some guys I watched competed in the first two, so there was some emotional investment when I saw those on VHS. However, nothing from 1 and 2 is included today anyway. I think that's one of the reasons I don't want to include anything after 10. The emotion just wasn't there for me anymore. Also, WrestleMania 11 was hot garbage. Let's get to the reveals, and I'll make some other points along the way. First up is my all-time favorite match, WrestleMania 3 for the Intercontinental Championship. Champion Macho Man Randy Savage against the challenger, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. It was the first time the Intercontinental Championship changed hands at WrestleMania. This match had it all. A great story, near pins, interference, high-flying moves, non-stop action. It was really the match, I think, that catapulted WrestleMania into a different stratosphere from other wrestling events. It stole the show from Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, which still managed to be the main event it needed to be. But Savage Steamboat was a masterclass in what sports entertainment has to offer. Savage had kayfabe injured Steamboat's throat, and Ricky the Dragon hadn't been back in action all that long before this match. Savage had Elizabeth in his corner as always, but the Dragon had a way to combat Savage's underhanded moves with a cornerman of his own, George the Animal Steele. Steele was involved in a storyline in which he fell head over heels for Elizabeth, which drove Savage bananas both on and off screen. Looking back on it now, I see so many indicators from Savage to Steamboat on what's about to happen as a heads up, like brief hand claps before an attempted clothesline ducked by the Dragon. Things I don't think you usually notice when they're happening, so just really slick communication by Mach in some instances. Momentum swings over and over, which I love in a wrestling match as well as a non-scripted sporting event. As the match was winding down, Savage was going to use the ring bell as a weapon to attack Steamboat's previously injured throat, but Steele knocked him off the top rope, and Savage had to abide by the rules. Steamboat won unexpectedly on a roll-up when Savage attempted a scoop slam. Sometimes the best finish is a surprise one. The ending seemed to kind of come out of nowhere, and I'm all about it. The Macho Man and the Dragon put on a show for the ages. Next, I'm going with the brother versus brother match that kicked off WrestleMania 10. Bret Hitman Hart and the Rocket Owen Hart. Talk about a doozy. First of all, I love it when something you think there's no chance in hell of happening happens. I never gave Owen a prayer to win this one, and I don't think many people did. It was a seesaw matchup, and in general, just a masterclass in technical wrestling. Bret was reluctant to accept the match in the storyline, and you saw a tiny bit of that early in the bout, But as it went on, Bret got more and more engaged and was focused on beating his younger brother. You could easily forget that this was all scripted just from Bret Hart's emotional changes throughout the contest. They told a tremendous story while executing each move with precision. The finish, when Owen stepped into Bret's victory roll for a pinning combination, again was unexpected and sudden. And this was at a time when heels rarely won clean and almost never won clean against the top babyface stars. So that was another great surprise and a great performance from the Brothers Hart. The match itself was perfect. The one thing I didn't like about the stipulation was that Bret got to wrestle for the WWE Championship at the end of the show, no matter what. I thought after losing a match, it made no sense to have him go out there and win the title 2 hours later. Alas, they wanted the belt off Yokozuna and onto a babyface, and Lex Luger was clearly not the right guy, no matter how much Vince McMahon wanted him to be. By the end of the night, no one really cared that Owen had defeated Bret anymore. They cared that Bret defeated Yoko. Great decision putting the brother versus brother match on first, so the crowd had time to think about some other things. Next, this is kind of a surprise opponent for Randy Savage to have such an amazing match with. It's the career-ending match at WrestleMania 7. Macho King Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior was never the best worker, but Savage turned everything and everyone he touched to gold. The second match of Savage's on this list, yet his head isn't on there as I'm only including the victors. This was one of the only times in his WWE tenure that the Ultimate Warrior didn't run to the ring. The loser of the bout was supposed to retire from in-ring action, so some extra precautions were taken. Another back and forth affair lasting 20 plus minutes, very unusual for a Warrior match. Savage gave the Warrior, I think it was 5 flying elbows, maybe it was 6, but I think it was 5. 5 flying elbows, and Warrior still couldn't be pinned for the 3 count. Another thing that rarely happened back then was a heel kicking out of a babyface's finisher, but it happened in this match. Warrior mounted a comeback, and after the press slam and splash, Warrior covered Savage, and the King kicked out on 2. Warrior actually started to walk away, talking to his hands, wondering if his time was up. The referee, I think it was Dave Hebner, could have been Errol, who knows, even tried convincing Warrior not to go out like that. Savage eventually came around and attacked Warrior, but when Savage went for the kill shot by having his manager, Sensational Queen Sherry, hold Warrior's throat over the barricade and come down from the top rope onto him, Warrior pushed Sherry away, Macho's throat hit the barrier. Warrior gave him a bunch of shoulder tackles and pinned him with 1 foot. Savage still managed to steal the show, though, as afterwards, Sherry attacked him, prompting his estranged manager, Elizabeth, to dart from the crowd to save Macho and reunite, thus becoming the Macho Man again. Some honorable mentions, and these were so hard to keep off. This is one of those instances where narrowing down my list to 4 was incredibly tough, because there were so many great matches. You may have noticed no world title matches have been on the mountain yet, and there won't be. Back then, the IC belt was really the workhorse belt that not always, but often went to the best wrestler, while the world belt was for popularity, so the better matches tended to be performed by the Intercontinental Champions. Now, the big belt was sometimes slipped onto the best wrestler, like Macho Man Randy Savage, who defeated Ric Flair for the title at WrestleMania 8, during the storyline in which Flair claimed to have had relations with Savage's wife, Elizabeth, prior to the couple coming together. Crazy good match. Flair got some color to Vince McMahon's chagrin. Savage won on a surprise roll-up, holding the trunks after being abused for what seemed like forever by Flair and his executive consultant, Mr. Perfect. I've said it before, I think WrestleMania 8 is underrated, evidenced by the fact that another match from 8 is on my honorable mentions, the Intercontinental Championship match between Bret Hitman Hart and then champion Rowdy Roddy Piper. Piper almost turned heel during this match. Hart bled like a stuck pig. The Hitman had probably the coolest counter I've ever seen to the sleeper hold and turned it into a pinning combination. He used the turnbuckles to flip over on the Rowdy one as Bret earned a rare pinfall over Piper to regain the Intercontinental Championship. Hulk and Andre at 3 has to get a mention just for the iconic slam. Hulk and Warrior at 6. Not a great match, but possibly the best build-up in Mania history. It's close between 3 and 6. Finally, the last reveal. To me, good wrestling is good wrestling. You don't need stipulations. The career-ending match didn't garner any rule changes to the match itself, so I really don't think that one even counts as a stipulation match. However, every once in a while, a stipulation match comes along that gets etched in our memories forever. And this is the case with my final selection for the Mount Rushmore of WrestleMania 1 through 10 matches. For the Intercontinental title, the WrestleMania 10 ladder match, Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon. Or Razor Ramon. Both guys had laid claim to the title, and they had to use a ladder to pull down both belts that were hanging up high. Ramon laughed in the face of superstition, as when he strutted down the aisle, he went right under the ladder. The ladder was used as a weapon multiple times. It was used as a launching pad. It really laid the groundwork for the ladder match in years to come. And yes, I know Bret Hart and Michaels had a ladder match first, but it wasn't on this kind of stage. Ramon did end up climbing the ladder to grab gold squared. Now, there was one thing that bothered me about this match. The referee kicks out Diesel, who was the bodyguard for Michaels at the time, early in the bout. To me, that makes no sense because it was a no DQ contest. So what is the referee really going to do if Diesel refuses to leave? He can't disqualify Michaels. Now, it did make the match better because it wasn't a match that needed interference, but they could have gotten rid of Diesel in a way that made more sense. Razor could have hit him with a chair and knocked him out cold. Another babyface could have come to the ring, challenged Diesel, and they could have brawled back to the locker room. It could have kicked a spin-off feud. They never knew what to do with Luger after Mania 10. Maybe Lex and Diesel could have started a rivalry. That would have been better than the Luger-Tatanka rivalry that we got. Those matches, Diesel and Luger, probably would have sucked, but it seems like a wet dream come true for Vince McMahon between two powerhouses. I know they did wrestle each other, mainly in tag matches in WCW. It's funny, Mania 10 doesn't usually immediately come to my mind when I think about great WrestleManias, yet it's the only event to get 2 matches up there. I mean, I even said that WrestleMania 8's underrated, and that had 2 matches, and they were only in the honorable mentions. Thinking about the rest of the card for 10, other than those 2 matches that are already mentioned, everything else kind of sucked. There was a mixed tag, Bam Bam Bigelow and Luna Vachon against Doink and Dink, snooze fest. Earthquake squashed Adam Bomb in seconds. The tag title match ended in a countout when Men on a Mission beat the Quebecers. Women's champion Alundra Blaze beat Leilani Kai in a time nobody cared about women's wrestling. Of course, Yokozuna had 2 matches against Luger and Bret. When Yoko has 2 matches on one card, you may be a little short on talent. And Yoko was good, but he's not the kind of guy who should be performing twice in one night. Even the Savage Crush Pinfalls Count Anywhere match was trash, and typically Savage makes every match look like a masterpiece. But those two matches that are up there from 10 were divine. This podcast is not endorsed, sponsored by, or affiliated with the WWE or any of its properties. Images of performers are sourced from Wikimedia Commons under appropriate licensing. So that does it. To review my Mount Rushmore of WrestleMania matches from the first 10 events: Steamboat vs. Savage at 3, Hart vs. Hart at 10, Warrior vs. Savage at 7, and Ramon vs. Michaels at 10. Enjoy WrestleMania 42, everybody. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. I will see you next time. Go Birds!